When you're the Prince of Wales, it helps in getting to work to have a decent-sized garden for a helicopter pad. The 347 acres of Highgrove House in Gloucestershire are just the job, once an H has been laid out where normally sheep safely graze. When the Queen's flight arrives to take the Prince of Wales to an engagement, his sons want a closer look, once the rotor blades have stopped. Prince William sounds disappointed when it's not his father's usual pilot, Commander Barry Kirby.
Where's Barry then?
But he still wants to climb on board.
Yes, there's a bunch of
Shall I?
He's been here before.
Shall I do it?
Come on. You ready, big boy?
On the way up, then.
Come on, then. Hold it tight.
I have you. Oops. Did that touch head?
Are your shoes clean?
Yes.
In the cabin, I think.
Ready?
Whoa!
I have you.
Okay.
I have you. There you are, Harry.
It's an affectionate family under perpetual public scrutiny. Though no one knew for months about the bruise on Prince Harry's nose caused by a small collision with a table.
Airspeed.
There we go. Right.
All safe and sound on the ground.
Quick, you guys pop on, quick. Kisses goodbye. Come on, Harry.
You've been in.
All been in.
Have you? Gosh. Future helicopter pilot.
Yes.
Without a doubt. Oh, Harry.
The helicopter will come back later so that the princess can join the prince for a concert in the evening.
So we see you later.
I'll be there about
Whatever it is.
4, I
And you're
think.
leaving here by
I think about 4.
4. Right. See you later. Very good.
Running the royal timetable and the royal lives means combining the workload of engagements with their own interests and a family life. At least the helicopters cut the hours spent travelling. But planning and organising the family in private and in public is work for 40 full-time staff. Buckingham Palace is the base for their household, the senior administrative staff. Though the Prince himself doesn't have a desk there, part of the south side of the palace is known as the Prince of Wales's office. It's been computerised in the past year, but the secretaries, called lady clerks, still keep the stamps for charity. The Prince doesn't say he has a job, he says he has a role. The accumulation of causes and duties and preferences compressed into a timetable. The Assistant Private Secretary, David Roycroft, takes a first look at the invitations.
This one must go on the list. This is the Disablement Independence Association, but it's really a case of somebody who needs to book a hall in time, so okay, we'll have to get a quick decision on that. Prince Wales has said that he wants to try and go to one of the concerts, if he can, possibly on the 24th of August, right? So that one will be on the covering minute as a sort of definite.
But some requests simply can't be fitted into the timetable.
Caribbean, there really is absolutely no chance of being able to do it, so we'll have to make sure that gets a special reply, I think.
Twice a year, the household meets to go through the next 6 months of engagements. It's done at home base, in a dining room at Kensington Palace, with the breakfast cleared away and Prince William on his way to school. Everything from policy to polo is considered. The most senior member of the household, the Prince's private secretary, Sir John Riddle, is also one of the newest. Formerly a banker, he joined just a year ago. Major Ronald Ferguson has been the Prince's polo manager for more than 10 years. The equerries spend 2 years on secondment from the services, doing much of the detailed day-to-day work. And there's now an assistant equerry, Captain Alison Ewan of the Women's Royal Army Corps. A forthright Canadian, Victor Chapman, looks after press matters. The Prince has settled his priorities in advance and has already agreed on a basic timetable. So one of the main points of this meeting is to decide which of his events the Princess will go to as well. Then she'll plan her own timetable in her own way with her senior lady-in-waiting, Anne Beckwith-Smith. First, the Assistant Private Secretary goes through the draft timetable of the Prince's engagements. It needs tact.
There's already a number of changes I had to make to the dates because the original dates didn't quite work, but they're mostly just a matter of swapping things around. The Royal Academy thing I just put in really as a reminder. There's no particular reason why you should do it then, but if you wanted to try and fit a few of those in, so...
For instance, the Prince, the patron of the Royal College of Music, has been invited to a reception to help its centenary appeal. So will the Princess, patron of the rival Royal Academy of Music, be going to the Royal College?
At the Royal College of Music. Yes. So...
Are you coming to that?
Oh, yes.
The reception?
Yes.
For the Royal College of Music?
Yes.
So you were the other day, didn't you?
Well, because...
There's also an outstanding invitation from the British Steel Corporation to visit Port Talbot.
So that was the one that had to be cancelled.
That's right.
Postponed last year.
Once the engagements have been decided, the Royal Diary is prepared on a word processor. The equerries and private secretaries arrange advance visits, known as recces, and the details are kept up to date on a screen on their desks. The Prince wants his role to be relevant, to set an example. So a priority is that his office has set aside time for him to visit Britain's inner cities. During the riots in Handsworth in Birmingham last year, 2 people died. There was millions of pounds worth of damage. After the tidying up, the area was given more aid. The Prince's charities helped with grants for community transport, pop groups, and young people's clubs. At a fashion firm run by Rastafarians, he found the help had been remembered in a special commentary by a local black disc jockey.
And the man don't just talk, the man do really care. He's the caring Prince. He is a modern-day thinker, taking the time out to visit us, our multi-ethnic community here in the Midlands. Everyone will want to meet and touch Prince Charles while he's visiting in Birmingham. I understand security is going to be pretty stiff today, but I can tell you there's no need for security where Prince Charles is concerned. He's protected by the community, especially the ethnic community, who will never see a hair in his head pressed.
It's central to his thinking, to his role, when the Prince appeared with the cider.
What are you mending it?
Personal. 1 in 10 of his public engagements in Britain this year has been as president of the organisation Business in the Community, welcoming more enterprise centres for small firms, particularly in northeast England.
We have to, I think, face the fact that we are seeing what amounts to a new industrial revolution. And I suspect that during the first industrial revolution, which Britain was either fortunate enough or perhaps unfortunate enough to be involved in, that it was a very painful experience for an awful lot of people. And I think this is the great difficulty that this country faces now, is a painful period of change. But new attitudes are beginning to emerge. I do very much admire all those people who are prepared to set up and start out on their own in these small enterprises. I think to think about doing so is one thing, but to actually get up and do it is another matter altogether. And I find going round these agencies that I leave encouraged beyond description by the people I meet and by the enthusiasm that I encounter.
He gives encouragement back to people, like a couple making Scottish clocks inside pieces of Scottish rocks.
Somebody looks as though you've not bits up Balmoral, I must say. Thank you. What was the ominous chips?
I do the illustrations for mine, which is a group of psychologists.
In the Midlands, he met the illustrator of a book on bedwetting.
It's got a special name, hasn't it, bedwetting? There's no special, there's a long word.
Because I have a problem.
Somewhere.
That special name is nocturnal enuresis. His charities have helped hundreds of young people to set up in business. They, in return, sometimes make presents for him.
You made it recently?
Yeah.
Lovely. Yes.
Or is the brooch for the princess?
Do rather in your hat. Your coat.
I haven't got much room left.
You got much room, you know. No. You're very good at that. That's terrific.
The princess plans her own program of engagements with the two people in the household who work almost full-time for her. Lieutenant Commander Richard Aylard is her equerry, and Beckwith Smith is her right-hand woman. When they meet the princess in her sitting room in Kensington Palace, the formalities of court life are observed. They greet her as Your Royal Highness, but they talk informally about the requests from the 43 organizations she's now closely connected with. One invitation is to the premiere of the musical Phantom of the Opera.
The dates given are the week from the 1st of October to the 8th of October.
And will my hubby be down from Scotland then? Because I'd quite like to go with him.
Yes,
Will he be down or will it be on my
I don't
own?
think he will. I think he'll still be
Still
up in Scotland, yes.
Do you think it's all right to go on my own for something like this? Because it's quite a big occasion.
It's a big occasion, but it is for your charity.
Is it going to be for birth?
No, Help the Aged, Help the Aged. You attended something similar for Birthright in the past.
Ma'am, Anne and I went to do a recce in Plymouth with HMS Trafalgar on Monday, and I wonder if we could just run through the draft programme that we've come up with. There wouldn't be large crowds on this occasion. It's very much a private visit to the submarine.
There should be nobody.
Should be nobody at all.
I mean,
Am I allowed, can I wear a pair of dungarees? Because it's quite oily, isn't it?
yes, it is. Dungarees is a very good idea, and also they recommend gloves. And I could,
Gloves?
Yes, to going up these ladders.
Going up and down the ladders.
They are very slippery because of salty.
Sounds like a salt course.
Well, you might think that when you get back
Not dissimilar, I tell you.
Off the west coast of Scotland, the men of HMS Trafalgar got ready for their royal visitor.
RFA range. 10,000 yards, that's all.
Showing 7 dBs.
The princess, as advised, was dressed for an assault course. The first obstacle was to get below, into the nuclear-powered sub. In the junior ratings mess, the pin-ups on the wall were surprisingly modest.
Can I sit down here? That's all right. I'm taking it. Who's that?
I thought you might ask that one.
Who's that? Who does she belong to? Yours? No.
We'd like to show you how the periscope works, so you can have a look through it yourself. Well, down slow. And turn that to make the periscope rotate.
Oh. What's that up there? Is that a trawler?
Yes. Feel the periscope go right. With your thumb, that little tip there. We're going down to the equivalent of 120 feet below the surface at the moment.
don't need to know that.
30 metres. Right, 30 metres. Not the stick, just the wheel. So it's one hand down the wheel.
Steering the sub, the Princess found the old naval commands haven't changed.
A bit more left hand.
Should be a great training for this.
Bit left hand wheel now.
At 16 knots off the Isle of Arran, she needed her Aquarius cap to deal with the half gale. But in the end, it was easier to forget the hat and the hairstyle. 30 feet up on the bridge, the sea seemed deceptively close. And once the chopper pilots realized that, yes, it was the Princess on the conning tower, the flypast went ahead. The cruise was over. Time to go back to Balmoral. The Princess found she'd left something behind.
Don't be disrupted.
Not at all.
You've got a blonde hair. I think you might
Oh,
have
it must be one of yours. What a shame.
Commander Toby Elliott seemed disappointed he didn't have to explain that away to his wife.
Next one, okay, thing? Right.
Knowing about inter-service jealousy, the Princess is also an honorary Air Commodore and Colonel-in-Chief of the Royal Hampshire Regiment. Before their parade in West Berlin, the regiment gave her a special brooch, paid for by the troops.
When your appointment was announced, it was the desire of every member of the regiment, old and young, retired, just joined, that we should mark this enormously happy occasion by a present. And therefore, I do ask Your Royal Highness to accept from every one of us this brooch, which is, the design is that of a soldier's cap badge of the Royal Hampshire Regiment, and it will give us the most enormous happiness to feel that you will sometimes wear it.
Thank you very much. Sometimes, always. Where do you think I ought to put it? It's a case of finder's fate, isn't it? Oh, no. You wait, tell me if it's straight.
Yes, I will.
No doubt I'll fit it on it.
I think that's very good.
I think that's all right.
Yes, I think it's absolutely good.
You can't really say much else, can you? It's lovely, thank you very much. I'm proud. This looks
Very well.
terrifying.
Now, ma'am, we're going to
Explain the parade.
explain the parade.
I have to excuse the royal car.
I love it.
Unfortunately, it was only red.
Is it British?
It is British. No, it's a Mercedes, actually. Unfortunately, we couldn't get a day line, but the doors do open.
No, I'm really teasing.
We will then drive from here and then onto the parade ground. That takes about a minute. I won't actually...
How many times do you practice this?
One or two.
One or two.
The Colonel-in-Chief knew her rights. When she said she wanted to drive a tracked armoured vehicle, it was organised. There was great relief, tempered by disappointment, that the learner driver just missed the press stand. In the sergeant's mess afterwards, she met her driving instructor, Colour Sergeant Jones, and his wife.
You try and do that with 60 pressmen watching you. Sergeant's hard. You're nervous wreck.
I know. He said you'd done very well.
Well, this has been kind.
Also introduced to the Colonel-in-Chief, the sergeant who stood in for her at the parade rehearsal, and the bearded sergeant who'd played her lady-in-waiting.
Was your lady-in-waiting?
She knew that. Yes, she does. Thank you, ma'am. I must say the two of you together. I wish I had been there to see it. Well, if we ever need you, perhaps we can ring you up.
There's always one army sergeant on board when the Prince and Princess go on foreign tours. A week after the Berlin visit, Sergeant Ron Lewis was ensuring the cases, hat boxes and packages were safely stowed away for the trip to Australia and America. As baggage master, he takes particular care of the cabinets with the princess's dresses. Sergeant Lewis also looks after the passports. The prince's mother may be the Queen of Australia too, but he still needs a visa to enter the country. The flight from London to Melbourne last October was the longest the Prince and Princess had made together. The Royal Australian Air Force asked to fly the long way round the world over North America because of problems positioning their crews. After 23 hours, the plane had still only got as far as a refueling stop at Fiji. The household were dealing with Fijian officials about a more formal royal visit planned for the landing on the way back. The princess rubbed away the sleep of nearly a day of darkness. The prince had a chance to stretch his legs on the edge of the runway as the plane was readied for the next stage to Melbourne. But word that the royal visitors were on the tarmac spread, and that was all the Governor-General of Fiji needed to turn out.
Good morning. I don't know what time of day it is.
It's now 5 minutes to 8 o'clock.
9 o'clock in the evening for us.
Greenwich.
We're very much looking forward to coming back for our quick visit.
We've seen the arrangement.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. Yes, this is fine.
Unfortunately, only for 1 hour.
I know. Maybe you can get us back again for not something else.
Much longer.
For Fiji fashion experts, the length of his skirt was stylishly in keeping with that of the princess. Back in the air, a surprise birthday treat for the prince's valet, Ken Stronach, and everyone joined in.
Where's it going? Are we going to put it here?
I don't know.
God bless you. Oh. You as well.
Ken had a confession to make. The princess let her sweet tooth defy any diet. On royal flights, the priority is to be casual and comfortable. Time to relax with the aides, detectives, and lady clerks who, behind the scenes, run the royal machine that was about to go into top gear.
We were flying Melbourne and landing into the north, and you should get a good view of Melbourne on both sides of the aircraft, and Port Phillip Bay out to the left.
Do you want your jacket?
We hope you all enjoyed your trip with 33 Squadron over the last 24 plus hours.
There were ceremonial swords to be polished by the Prince's Australian equerry, Commander Brian Robertson.
Have you got the speeches?
Finally, after 11,620 miles, Melbourne. the base for a tour to mark the 150th anniversary of the state of Victoria. The Prince and Princess also had to make the obligatory visit to the federal capital, Canberra. The Princess was ready and waiting. The Prince thought he'd spied some familiar faces among the press corps. And he and the Princess could check the receiving line, who were checking how to address them. After 33 hours in a plane, anyone would want to get the tour underway. But not so fast. It was a royal flight, but the Australian pest control officer showed no mercy.
We're off.
I've just got to go and say goodbye to the group. Exhausted, double jumping. Right. Good luck.
Thanks, I gotta leave it.
After a day and a half's flying, a moment to say goodbye and thank you.
No room.
You got first.
Australia matters a lot to the Prince, and now 12 days there had begun. Dawn on Melbourne Cup Day, the biggest thing in the Australian racing and social calendar. Only springtime showers threatened the big day. A day to forget politics and Republicans, a day out. Breakfast was made by their butler, Harold Brown. Breakfast wouldn't be a proper breakfast without him. On this morning, it was the kitchens of Government House, Melbourne. Cereals and tea and a rose, and today, quite a walk. At home, Harold is also an intermediary with the outside world, taking calls, passing on messages. Ken Stronach packs, presses and brushes the Prince's clothes. Evelyn Dagley looks after the Princess's hats, dresses and shoes. There have to be 2, sometimes 3 different outfits each day on tour. The assistant private secretary had been up since dawn with a problem a week ahead. The runway at Palm Beach in Florida would be closed for important repairs the day of the royal flight home.
Well, our priority's got to be just the time it takes us to get back, I'm afraid. You see, we've got absolutely no leeway whatsoever on the morning of the 13th of November.
In the office, there was a photofax machine to receive documents and see what the London papers were saying. How they described today's royal outfit depended on one phone call.
Hello, could I speak to Evelyn Dagley, please, the Princess of Wales's dresser?
May I ask who's calling?
Yes, it's Killoran McGrigor of the Princess of Wales's press office. Morning, Evelyn. It's Killoran.
Oh, morning, Clara.
Hello. Can you tell me what Her Royal Highness is wearing today?
It's a suit. It has a black, slim-fitting skirt and a white jacket gathered onto the left hip with a black shawl collar.
Someone say something.
A straw hat with a black crown and a wide white brim. Black accessories.
These tanks have been got off mothballs. The strong smell of mothballs is going to be today. We don't have to. No.
The traditional buttonhole for Melbourne Cup Day is a yellow rose, and the hostess of Government House, Lady Young, had organised some for the royal team. But the Prince had his own idea.
The traditional colour of the day, everybody else would like.
What's the traditional colour?
It's a yellow rose, and I think that the rest
like
people
being
might
different.
like it. Good, that's fine. Good, that's fine.
I had a bowl. I thought it was very nice.
Yes, it's a headband around your forehead.
There was a very light drizzle. One could assume that somebody was taking an umbrella.
Have we got... What?
Oh, this man rock.
Oh.
At Flemington Park Racecourse, all who were well dressed in Australia wanted to be seen, along with those who were overdressed and those who were underdressed.
Racing in the Cup. And Tristark Federer began well with under...
All Australia organises sweepstakes on the race, and the royal household had organised its own. The horse drawn for the princess, Kiwi, didn't seem to be doing too well.
Kiwi is last of all, 35 from the leader. 2.5 lengths then to Lacqueries and closer to the fence now, and a length and a half then Federer and under...
The prince's draw was out of it too. But coming to the line, the horse drawn for Prince William had a chance. Watch out for the grey, Coiro Corime.
Here's Warren Newson's with his run, and then Federer flying home. Chipsicum is a great go. Coiro Corime's got ahead in front of Butternut. Warren Newson's coming at Coiro Corime. Warren Newson's going home. The better they hit the line. Warren Newson's from Coiro.
A second for Prince William. Some did even better. In the royal party, there were winners, losers, and those who said they covered their expenses. The princess owned up.
Well, I backed the loser. It was the last one.
But Inspector Tony Parker, one of the royal detectives, had more luck.
How much did you win? $100. Oh, well done. What did you put on it, 10?
He's going to take us out to dinner tonight. All of us.
David Roycroft found the Palm Beach problem still unresolved. He had to choose his moment to tell the prince as they discussed a timetable for the next few days. They were already trying to fit in a team party.
Anyway, it may not turn out to be possible. No. Except in the airplane.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's someone's birthday on the way back. It's Alan Peters' birthday, back from America.
Sorry, my birthday on the way back.
Well, let's talk about that.
Why?
You've decided
We're going to be later.
You've decided to change your birthday.
Why?
Well, there's a problem with the runway at Palm Beach.
Not possible.
What do you mean later?
No, they
Later
tell
what?
us.
But we may have to drive to Miami and take off from there. So
Which is a mere 5 hours drive,
no,
wasn't it?
it's not.
6.
45 minutes.
About 45 minutes.
So we'll get back to Bristol by midnight.
I think it might just tip us over to midnight.
That's all right, because it's 6 o'clock our time, isn't it? Body time.
Oh, that's a
Sorry.
good way of looking at it.
Still be drinks time for you.
I'm working on that.
Yes, right.
So no press, just official control.
Aye, my little time.
10 to 8, 10 to 8. Yes. Right.
On any tour, there's a lot of official dinners. The state dinner in Government House, Melbourne, was of asparagus and chicken. The guests were the dignitaries of the state of Victoria. As always, the visitors watched their weight without upsetting their hosts. The members of the royal household always bow or curtsy to the prince and princess when they say goodnight, and the first time they see them in the morning. At the end of a day of receptions, engagements, and official functions, which had all gone fine, there was still one snag. What is the form when your tiara gets caught in your dress? Some better late-night news. Palm Beach Airport had agreed to postpone the runway repairs.
Well, that's excellent news. Okay, so we'll just stick to exactly the same timings we had before, and the same loading. Great, well, that's a great relief. Okay.
And what do I do?
The time difference meant it was an early start to link up by satellite with a charity telethon in London.
Shane, you've got the mid-shot. Just look slightly to the right of the...
The Prince likes to help the media on projects with positive benefits, even if a technician misunderstands him.
Go on, there's a strange noise going on.
What can you hear?
Yes, that's right.
Can you hear London okay?
Quite loud.
and thinks quite loud means I like it loud.
We can select the volume control.
God! Oh, they too loud? It's quite...
However, the Prince and Princess are not exactly happy about too much frivolous coverage in some papers. Their staff got uneasy when the Royal Press Corps, which decently owns up to the nickname the Rat Pack, overstayed its welcome, getting a shot at a polo match in Melbourne.
How long were we going to let this go? I think it's time to go. Yeah. It's time to move on. Time to move on.
There's even suspicion of the press, too, among the travelling team from hairdresser to Lady Clark. So the team photograph at the end of the Australian tour was one of the rare occasions when they're all together. A team member is discreet, not too pushy, a good judge of the royal mood. There's a difference between the officials of the royal household and the domestic staff, like the butler. The two mix on some social occasions, but at other times there's an element of upstairs, downstairs.
Okay, here we go.
The photograph taken, the next leg of the tour was underway, across the Pacific to the United States. The Royal Standard is flown for every takeoff and landing, even for the 1-hour stopover at Fiji. It may be one of the shortest visits made anywhere, but it was an important visit, and it needed detailed planning by the Assistant Private Secretary and the Press Secretary.
The Guard of Honor will be facing the grass. Is that correct?
I'm not sure. That the commander, he decided it would be better to have the...
I haven't quite got the sort of orientation right. Those are the steps, all right? And you're saying the Guard of Honor is going to be over there?
Right.
Right.
Now, as they come down the step here...
But it'll be away from the wing of the aircraft, because at the moment, I would make the wing of the aircraft somewhere right out there.
Yes.
I think you're going to find the wing of the aircraft is where the Guard of Honor are. So the Governor-General
will be down here.
Will be at the bottom of the steps.
Right.
Right.
The Prime Minister.
Presents the Prime Minister and Commander of the Royal Fiji Military Forces.
Right.
And then we all stop.
We all stop.
For the Royal Salute.
For the Royal Salute.
And then the Princess will stand still, is that right? While the Prince of Wales is invited to escort.
Right.
Review the guard.
Reviews the guard and comes back.
Comes back.
Princess?
I think...
By the time the
Princess
will walk towards that.
So far, so good. The visit started, getting into the hour, a program that could have lasted days, if there'd been time. The Fijians were even ready to bend the time a little. They celebrated the Prince's birthday a week early.
Happy birthday, dear Prince Charles. Happy birthday to you.
Hosts are expected to have customs and rituals to show. Guests are expected to appreciate them, and all the more in a special pavilion on a patch of airport runway. There was tea for the Prince and exotic fruit juices for the entourage. The flies liked the sandwiches. Everyone else declined them politely. Staying on schedule means all good things must come to a hasty end.
Ready to start engines. Roger, they are lifted. Ground flight deck.
Soon the royal party were back on board to continue the flight to America.
Clear for takeoff.
Clear for takeoff. Start switches. Try the heat on. Chicks complete. Clear for takeoff.
3-1. Rotate.
The biggest publicity test, for the Princess especially, lay ahead in Washington. On the first day there, the press was naturally a touch anxious to get pictures of the Prince and Princess arriving at the White House. Some were doing their best to time it so that they could get in the same picture as a prince, a princess, and a president.
All right, stand by. Hey, they're coming. Yes, that coming in, right. Stand by.
Finally, an American television reporter got his timing and his expression just right.
It was a long flight, and not even the royal couple is totally immune to jet lag. So they stopped off for a few moments at the British Embassy residence to freshen up before coming here to the White House. Coffee, or if they prefer, tea, with President and Mrs. Reagan.
The prince had been to the White House before, memorably, if mildly awkwardly, when he had to meet the daughters of the then President Nixon. What the Reagans wanted was a photograph. That was easy. It was a picture everybody wanted. Visit by visit, photograph by photograph, the heirs of George III have conquered, if not the United States, then the United States media. The prince knows the pull of curiosity. So at the first royal lunch in Washington, as guest of the British ambassador, Sir Oliver Wright, he wanted to know who would be at the afternoon seminar on inner city architecture.
Other press and the guests going to be in all the time?
No, they're just there for the beginning of the discussion, of the first presentation, and then thereafter they leave. So,
You're quite certain about that, then?
Take them out myself.
But do you know whether any of the urban design assistance team people are going to be there?
They will be there, yes.
They will?
They will. The idea is to have a demonstration, really, or an explanation of what Americans are doing to the inner cities. And they are doing a great deal to the inner cities, particularly places like Baltimore, Boston.
I suppose that we're doing it in the Docklands ourselves, aren't we? Do they have the equivalent of building societies? Oh, yes, they're called savings and loans. Savings and loans, they're going bust at a fast rate.
But it means, of course, that there are simply thousands upon thousands of small banks, and particularly in the farm belt, where things are pretty tough at the moment, and they've had a whopping harvest, but no market for it, so the farmers are going bust, and I'm afraid farm banks are...
Yes, I listened to the farming program on the wireless in the UK, and they did a complete program on the American situation. It's rather worrying if it ever happens as far as we're concerned. I should know it.
At a reception in the gardens of the embassy, the princess took the time to meet the sister-in-law of her husband's senior detective. It showed royal gratitude personally and to a wider audience.
I've seen him doing some work. Yes, family job.
I've never seen it before.
Very like your sister. Really? Oh.
Unless you're really a royal insider, such a special introduction is unlikely. Nobody said that to these young Americans trying to get a good look at the princess. Their view was usually blocked by large security men, but the princess was visible in occasional and so ecstatic glimpses.
Make my day, my life.
Susie Muller went to every event where she might get a chance to see the princess.
Get it? I got something, I don't know, but I'll know that blue.
At the Washington Cathedral, she joined those who queued so they could say they'd been to church with royalty, or who stood outside and screamed as if morning service were a film premiere.
She's so thin, it's disgusting. She's beautiful. She's great. She's beautiful. She's great. Oh, my God. I shook his hand, which was enough for me. I mean, seeing royalty that close up, I mean, that they actually, like, take the time out to come and talk to us. It's like, it's just unbelievable. God, it was great. I used the whole roll of film. It was worth it, I swear. Nothing can compare to this. I mean, I can't get any better unless maybe if I shook her hand, but that'd be about it. I mean, I was this close to her. I mean, how can you get better? You just can't unless they took me home or something.
Regrettably, but maybe not all that surprisingly, Grace Coronado was not in the royal party that flew home to London. After a long foreign tour, or a busy time in Britain, the Prince and Princess have their own ways of recovering. One of the Princess's favourites is watching ballet. She had wanted to be a ballet dancer herself, but grew too tall. She now likes to watch the rehearsals of the London City Ballet.
Okay, 7, 8. Coupe, 1, 2, fondue, up, over.
She was invited to be the patron by the artistic director, Harold King.
I was asked 4 years ago to be their patron, and I thought, well, this is marvellous. If I can't be a ballet dancer, maybe I can help them in some other way. I so enjoy going to see them rehearse and then seeing the performance on stage. They're a very young company and put so much hard work and effort into it. It's not a particularly glamorous life being a ballet dancer, and there's a lot of disappointments. There might be a last-minute injury. All those things need to be taken care of, and if a gala performance helps, and if I can go along too, so be it. Marvellous. Because the gala was wonderful. Adored that.
You enjoyed it, yes?
I had a cold, much to Harold's horror. Every time there was a quiet moment, it was going on. I loved it.
Look at it. It doesn't show in your eyes when you have it.
Oh,
I mean,
just
yeah. No, but some people's eyes go dull.
You must have felt rotten though, having to sit through it all.
No, it's all right now. I just get embarrassed. And you know when you're not supposed to cough, you cough more.
Yes, of course, you can't control it.
And the bachelor's dress, of course.
Yes. Didn't think I had the pearls down the back that night.
No, you didn't.
I learnt that. I was very uncomfortable when I wore that. Stabbed in the back.
Swing fascination.
I love asking them questions if where they're staying they're happy, and if the accommodation's all right, or are they going through a tremendous amount of points, and how much does ballet shoes cost if they've gone up and the feet are sore and aching. And I'm just terribly proud of them. I think they're wonderful, smashing.
At other times, and behind very closed doors, the Princess has lessons in various sorts of dance.
It's a sort of cross-section between jazz, tap dancing and ballet. Some weeks we'll do one, some weeks we'll do another. But any form of music I hear, I have to move. I cannot sit still, as you might have seen in recent things.
Something everyone could see was a pop concert at Wembley, with thousands of others to celebrate 10 years of the Prince's Trust. That's taking it easy in public. Highgrove gives almost total privacy. New bushes and trees have been planted to block the view from any long lenses. The family tries to get there every weekend. The Princess has looked after the redecoration inside and has photographed the progress outside as the Prince and his two full-time gardeners have transformed the grounds. At the side of the house, the Prince did some designing around a sundial. And at the back, he put in a dry brick wall and ornamental pond.
Soul into this, and I think it's enormously enjoyable. I was never a gardener before. I came here, but the moment I had somewhere of my own, all this appeared. I want to try and improve and create and hope to leave something better behind, really.
The prince's enthusiasm hasn't been dampened by the injury to his finger he got gardening. He's still working, weeding and designing things, like the ornamental gate, which is based on arches he saw on the Taj Mahal. It leads to his particular favourite at Highgrove, the walled garden.
Well, when I first came here, what it was 6 years ago, it was rather sort of basic, the whole thing, and a lot of it was fairly empty and grew vegetables, and quite a lot of vegetables. I had always rather wanted to create something rather special in a walled garden, and this, when I saw this walled garden, when I first came to look at the house, I did rather fall in love with it, I must say. The original plan was much too complicated, and I thought of all sorts of box-shaped beds, you know, like D's and C's and every sort of thing. I mean, it would have been spectacular, but it would have taken years and hundreds of people to achieve it. So in the end, I thought it was too difficult, so we'll simplify it. And I just had simple crosses and St. Andrew's crosses in 4 quarters, and then the fountain in the middle, and with the fruit trees and the vegetables, and then arbors in the middle, with roses and wisteria and clematis and things up it, which would provide rather nice sort of cool, shady spots. I love coming in here, and I potter about and sit and read, or I just come and talk to the plants, really. Very important to talk to them, they respond. An arbor with things that smell on, I think is rather welcoming, and a shady spot which has masses of different scents, smells, and then you can sit there quietly if you want to, contemplating the infinite, and then move on to something else. I rather like coming in the evenings when I get a chance. But I actually sat here the other day and tried to write some letters over there, and all it did was rain on my letters. It drove me mad. I'd always wanted to grow fruit, flowers, and vegetables in one place with box borders, you know, things like that. And one of the great things was that as a wedding present, we were given a complete set of fruit trees by the Fruiterers' Company, which was marvellous. And, believe it or not, a herb garden by the Sussex branch of the Women's Institute. The herb side is enjoyable because there's an awful lot to learn about that. And also, it's rather amusing trying to invent new soups and things. This herb lovage, look, you see it smells very good, anyway. But I'm told that if you have a stock, or, you know, if you add a bit of sort of potato to it, it actually makes rather a good soup.
It tastes something like a celery.
Yes, that's right. What you actually do with it, I think, it goes very well in soups and stews. I mean, it helps to add flavour. I did do quite a lot of the planting myself with our own team here. And I got the most wonderful man who's brilliant at vegetable growing. So that's a great help. I got rather sort of fed up with having beans growing up the normal sticks. They don't look right in a garden which is in shapes and patterns. And so I suddenly thought, well, why not grow them up, bean sticks, but in the form of a tunnel? And this year I've got a bean tunnel, and I thought, well, let's try a sweet pea tunnel as well. I've yet to see which child takes the gardening, I don't know. And sometimes children, if you know, a parent is keen on something like that, sometimes one of them likes doing it as well. But what I want to do, when they're a little bit older perhaps, is set aside a little area for them to garden in. I think if you've got your own little garden, it's rather fun. You learn that way.
One of the prince's interests is already rubbing off. Prince William at 4 is a promising horseman.
You're going to get on yourself, I'll try to.
In his jodhpurs, riding boots and hat, he's the personification of a Thelwell cartoon. Smokey the pony is looked after by the Highgrove groom, Marion Cox, though sometimes it travels with the family to Balmoral and Windsor.
Good boy, up down. We're brilliant. Good boy. down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Okay. Good boy. Teddy!
Prince William has watched his father and his grandparents ride. He's got great confidence and learned faster than his parents and his groom expected.
Oh, no, not the sneaky rabbit, Jim. That dog's after rabbits, is he?
Prince Harry, who's now 2, isn't far behind his brother in his riding.
Here, Mummy. Oh, look. Shall I alter the stirrup?
He's good enough to ride smoking once the straps and stirrups have been adjusted.
Come on, can I lead him, please? Will you promise to walk slowly? All right, keep him on a short rein. That's much better. Nice and slowly. That's better for Harry. Good boy.
This is the fun part of bringing up the princes, in a routine that today's public still expects. In what's to come for them, it will be what the parents think are the real priorities of their own lives that will matter very much more. When you're the Princess of Wales, part of the job is flying the flag for Britain. It's best to do it in style. The Princess took her first flight in Concorde to Vienna to make friends and headlines during British Week. The Foreign Office pays for such tours. It supplies much of the briefing material. The Princess provides the lighter touches. And the embassy staff get a signed photograph from the Princess as a thank you present. But the Foreign Office and the taxpayer weren't picking up the whole bill for this flight. It was shared with the fare-paying passengers in the back, mostly fashion models and designers, off to promote British fashion in Vienna. The Princess hadn't travelled much before her marriage. She went up front to Concorde's cockpit to talk to the pilots.
How many flights will there still today? Yes.
This is it? Yes, just the one flight.
The flight to New York's quite full, isn't it?
Yes, it's the average load. It's about 70%, 70-75%. Just about right.
It's supposed to be the sun I've seen for days.
Yes, I know. It's the only way to get to it.
And soon, as Concorde lowered its nose for landing, it was the first time for a week she'd seen her husband. And not Vienna yet. This was what they call a racing stop with engines running in Milan. The Prince's luggage was rushed aboard. The Prince, his ears protected against the noise, was still nursing the finger he injured gardening. He'd been on a holiday on his own, painting in Italy, and he'd been given a memento or two.
Got more wine. Is that all wine?
In Vienna, British technicians were preparing for the fashion show that was to be the grand finale of the week's visit.
Lift it a touch. Up a bit more. Just a bit more. Right. Okay.
The sales pitch was almost ready for the 100-strong team approaching on Concorde.
The windows are terribly small, you can't quite see. Thank you very much.
All right.
See you on Wednesday. I hope you have a nice rest.
Thanks very much. I look forward to seeing you.
Perhaps I can come up and sit there later.
Most certainly. We were expecting you. Bye now.
We are launching something called teleordering,
which is a book ordering scheme. What we would like, if at all possible, would be for you to key in the order for the first book.
Would you like to do the honour? This is the carriage return, and if you just press that, it will take the cursor away, and the whole order will then be put onto the disc. That order's now stored on the disc, ready. Thank you for doing our first order for us.
It was exhausting. Why is it that all accountants wear glasses? Yes, because you had to read too much.
No doubt you're understaffed, right? I mean, you all have to work hideous long hours.
Oh, yes, yes.
I just come to the British Council man, who's having to work. He gets up at 6 o'clock in the morning, works till 8 at home, and doesn't get back from the office until about 8 at night. I mean, I don't know how they do it. You're doing it.
Long hours French, I think, was taught quite generally, but they didn't do his Latin.
We always had Latin.
You did?
Yes.
You didn't like it?
Well, it didn't like me.
The veterans of many a fashion show were almost ready for the catwalk.
I think you've got to look at my notes.
Waiting there, a princess with an expert eye. Not all the princess's dresses can be organized in days. Elizabeth and David Emanuel are among half a dozen designers submitting ideas for the forthcoming visit to the Gulf states and Saudi Arabia. The designs and fabrics are discussed in the princess's sitting room at Kensington Palace.
David and Elizabeth Emanuel.
Hello.
Hello, good morning, ma'am.
Come in. The sketches were marvellous. Shall we just put... Have you got lots of material in there?
Yeah.
Shall we just... It's a difficult one, is because I've got to hide my elbows, 3/4 length in hem and a sort of cruel round neck.
Well, we've got tons of fabric to show you.
Oh, that's lovely.
That's quite a new one. We had printed ourselves. Quite pretty. One.
So, I think we might avoid the spots.
Yeah, okay.
No spots.
No spots.
The designs must observe Arab custom, but still be adaptable to British style and British weather.
Okay.
When I come back, can we snip them off so I can wear them normally, if you know what I mean? Is that
yeah.
Might be possible.
Yes, because it'll be winter, won't it, when you get back?
But the hemlines and things, because we've got to make them quite long.
The evening dresses...
The evening dresses will be fine.
I think.
It's just that I just want to get maximum usage out of the day ones, if I can.
I think if we do it belted, then, don't you think? Yeah. And what about taking the... Yeah. and take the buttons through. No, but you want to keep that same skirt. Why don't you be the skirt?
Yeah.
And then do pleats.
It's very nice. I like the pleats at the front. I think it looks quite...
And again,
yeah,
with the sleeves down to here.
Yes, please.
Would you wear a hat with that one? Would you?
Well, I quite like what you've done there.
Just like a sort of...
You're a top knot?
Like a band. Yes, I'd
Yeah.
love to wear
Really?
that.
Really?
Could I do it with my mop?
Yeah.
Yes.
We could tempt it.
Well, that's easy. Well, we can do that.
Many journeys are not as glamorous as to the Arab states. But the prince sometimes prefers travelling in Britain, like a visit to the tenants of the Duchy of Cornwall, who provide his income. Unlike his parents and close relatives, he gets nothing from the state in the civil list. In fact, he pays the Treasury a quarter of the money he raises each year from the Duchy's 130,000 acres in 10 counties. The Isles of Scilly are one of the most picturesque parts, but financially draining. The prince wanted to visit Andrew May, who'd just taken over from his father as the tenant on Seaways Farm.
Yeah, there's a holiday unit down there, and the farmhouse behind you.
Yes.
And 2 other holiday units attached, which my parents...
Oh, yes. That isn't a holiday unit, though, is it?
No. You're not meant to see that.
What do you do with that?
It's coming down shortly.
Oh, is it?
It's been there since time immemorial. So.
Has it got a bed in it?
I wouldn't admit to it if there was, no.
Apart from holiday lettings, Andrew May has been using the Duchy's land for cultivating a daffodil business.
They were locals. They tell you this.
Now, these are you're still cutting some of these, or you're picking
Yes.
a few?
This is the last of one of the later varieties, because we do the work, and in the early part of the year, November, December and perhaps January, but we just keep trickling on through the year. This is a variety called Cheerfulness.
Oh, yes.
Less cheerful was the news that the field where they were growing was being eroded by the sea.
So the cliff's just there, is it?
Yes. So there's nothing much we can do about that, but watch, unfortunately.
Except watch to see your field disappear slowly, I suppose.
Your field.
Correction.
It still grieves us.
Running the duchy is one definite role for the eldest son of the sovereign. So is standing in at investitures while the Queen is on tour abroad. In the ballroom at Buckingham Palace, there were 121 decorations, from knighthoods to MBEs.
1 CBE military, 15 CBE civil gentlemen, 3 ABE military, 6 ABE ladies, 27 ABE gentlemen, civil.
At 10 to the hour, a detachment of the Yeomen of the Guard, the senior of the Queen's bodyguards, take up their positions on the dais. They are, in fact, the oldest royal bodyguard in the world. They've just celebrated their 500th anniversary. It isn't exactly the time or the place for innovation, for doing things very differently. But to many of his mother's subjects, the prince's duties, the ceremonial, the honours list, are the very stuff of monarchy. For the prince, it's another chance to meet people, even if they're a bit more overawed than usual. Monarchy's always been a mixture of the formal and the personal.
Knight's Bachelor, to receive the honour of knighthood, Sir Trevor Skeet, Member of Parliament.
The music of the band of the Irish Guards gives the ceremony a palm court atmosphere. Like the Queen, the Prince will have a word with each of them, sometimes more than a word. He has studied the list of those to be honoured, from ambulance men to actors.
Mr. Alec McCowan.
Not all investitures are at the palace. The prince presented the Order of the British Empire to a woman of nearly 80 in an office in South Shields. They call this Catherine Cookson Country. And this is Catherine Cookson, whose books have sold in their millions around the world. Because she was too ill to travel to London for her medal, the prince was asked to present it to her on his visit to an enterprise centre. The setting wasn't regal, but the day may have meant even more to her for that.
I'm sorry that you can't get to Buckingham Palace for this.
I was very sorry too.
It was very pretty.
Yes, it was.
I hear you've got an enormous number of novels in the pipeline, haven't you?
Well, there's 8 that the publisher's waiting to come out. Yes.
How do you do it? It's incredible.
I think I have a machine of
You must have. But your head must be full of stories all the time, is it?
Yes, I won't live long enough to get them out, I don't think.
I do hope so. You've got to.
No, but...
That's terrific. Were they very strict up here when you were at school?
No. I hardly ever went to school. So.
Did you? Just shows it doesn't matter, does it? Dear, well, I'm going to give you this, which gives me enormous pleasure. I'm afraid I'm a very poor substitute for the Queen, but
thank you very much.
The least we can do, with many, many congratulations.
Thank you.
Very well deserved.
Very great day for me.
It's marvelous.
I feel like Cinderella was arrived at the ball.
Well, it was a great pleasure to see you, Cinderella, and I hope you keep well anyway, as well as possible.
Marvelous. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Very nice.
Bye-bye.
Oh, he was wonderful. Yes. Simply wonderful.
When the princess chooses her engagements, she likes to be on the side of those who are fighting back against adversity. Like the patients at one of the best spinal injury units in Britain, in Sheffield. Trevor Wright is 18. He dived into a river that was too shallow and has the worst sort of injury you can have and still breathe. A whiskey bottle filled with water and a tube to his mouth is the only kind of exercise he can get.
This is an exercise that Trevor does. It's a very high neck injury. He hasn't got very much movement at all in his arms, so we exercise his lungs.
I thought you were advertising whiskey or something.
He just drinks it.
And were you in a motorbike accident?
I was in a driving accident. Dived into water when I was too shallow.
So how long do they work you in here for? Long enough, I suppose.
Long enough, yeah.
Well, are you able to sleep in the afternoon? No, it's still at it.
Yeah, still got to come down here.
And do you have relations coming to see you, or are they miles away?
They're miles away, but they try to come in once a fortnight. Try to get out of it.
The princess has a particular interest in the battle against drugs, which she says should be fought on 2 fronts, prevention and cure. Prevention at Heathrow, where the customs men know the smugglers' tricks.
20 kilos of that substance. The cocaine was concealed in false compartments on both sides.
And cures, like a mother of 2 children in Cardiff.
Yes. Which drug are you on?
Heroin and methadone.
And your husband, has he got a job? Are you married?
No.
Oh, did you feel it's too small for him? Somehow.
Right now.
Well, at one stage at our home, as Carol's, I'm sure what Man is saying, is her mother wouldn't let her have her children. Her mother kept them while Carol sorted herself out.
Was that a good idea at the time?
Yes.
It did.
Original problem.
The princess has praised the work of the special centres, like the one in Cardiff, for those trying to give up drugs. For John Wilson, the problem was amphetamines.
But why do you think you turned to drugs rather than drink if you were looking for something?
Well, my problem was I started early as a youngster, as a teenager, taking amphetamines. Yeah, that's when I started. Started taking amphetamines. Before I turned around, I was hooked on amphetamines. And by this time around, I started getting problems, and I managed to get hold of amphetamine, thinking I wouldn't get addicted again. And before I turned around, I was addicted on amphetamine.
Did you get it from friends?
Yes, old people.
Old people.
In the Silver Jubilee year of Help to Aged, the Princess has visited many old people's homes and day centres.
I thought you might be chatting up the ladies.
She said that growing old is sadly not always fun. Maybe her visits can help.
These are hassocks for St Mary's Church.
Oh, goodness. They're always kneeling on things like this when they're
Yes, just backing them. But didn't
what do you actually stuff it with? What do you put it
well,
inside?
there's sort of show you this one. When you made a back them out, it was soft. Yes.
It's not leather tights going in there.
No.
The children's charities are a favourite. This 10-month-old girl with Down syndrome was being adopted through Dr. Bernardo's. Patrick and Eileen told the Princess they already had 2 children of their own and had fostered 2 mentally handicapped adults.
Through no fault of their own, obviously, so we're parents to them as well.
You're building extensions on your
we are.
We
just as a happy family, you know. Yeah. I mean, I was one of 9, so we was used to sharing, yeah. We was used to sharing, you know. So, and this is our special little girl. Yeah. We just got what we asked for. We asked for just exactly what we wanted. She's made to measure, absolutely. She's wonderful. Aren't you? Getting that bottom tooth, aren't you? You're out of teething at the moment.
Sleepless night or 2?
No, not at the moment.
Right.
Not at the moment.
You wait.
She's very good.
The Princess's own sleepless nights are getting fewer as the royal children grow up. Corporal William Windsor has got his own uniform.
All right down there.
Oh, go on, have a go down the slide. You start?
Yeah.
The uniform was a present from the families of the 1st Battalion of the Parachute Regiment. The Prince of Wales is Colonel-in-Chief. 2 regular-size uniforms were cut down to size for the 2 young princes. The berets were soaked and placed over pudding basins to shrink them to fit. Prince William is an energetic child. His parents think no more so than any other 4-year-old. Only the exploits of this one make newspaper headlines.
Another go, William. Go on, go down. What's this?
My jacket.
Well done.
Safer to practice his salute. The Corporal and Lance Corporal Harry get on pretty well together.
Hey!
Prince Harry is less extrovert, but like Prince William, he's a keen para. He's getting into training looking after his uniform. While his brother practices his parachute jumps. Their mother's pleased about the way they play together. One of the great advantages of a few days in Gloucestershire is the chance for the children to play not only in the grounds of Highgrove, but with other children in the area, and also to go on outings. Sometimes Prince William isn't entirely sure it's a good idea. But when a soldier is slow to follow orders, his mother has her own tactics for bringing him into line.
Quick, 'cause Mary will go. All right, Harry will have all the fun then. No, it's all right.
No!
On this afternoon, the children went out with their nanny, giving the Princess the chance to get ready for an outing of her own, a helicopter trip over Highgrove. The house was bought through the Duchy of Cornwall for about £750,000 in 1980. Since then, the Duchy has bought an adjoining farm of 420 acres. Though the Princess has travelled in and out of Highgrove in the back of the Wessex of the Queen's flight, she'd always wondered what it would be like on the flight deck.
Where's he going?
We're all a bit scaring.
He's already getting in yet.
Yes, you can start there.
The short flight was arranged for a day when the helicopter would be there anyway to take the princess to a charity concert in Birmingham.
God, it's more like a family outing, you know, is it? Yeah.
The Queen's Flight crew had organised it all, and inspired by the princess's summer craze for spotty dresses and spotty socks, the pilot, Commander Barry Kirby, had made special arrangements for the headphones.
Sorry.
I know. I thought you'd like that. It's our own design.
Spots, hooray!
No problem about the princess being a supernumerary up front, because on such a short trip, the Queen's Flight navigator could work from just behind her.
That's the important bit.
So it was once round the block before setting off for Birmingham. The Queen's Flight helicopters, like the Royal Train, are reserved for getting to official events. The princess is a fan. One advantage of the choppers is that they enable her and the prince to sometimes get home in time to put the children to bed, something they like to do as often as possible.
Another spots.
Yes. 3 hours.
Did you feel that jolt?
Terrible.
Wasn't it awful? I took my foot off too quickly.
The princess was able to report to her senior lady-in-waiting with some new local intelligence.
Love that. A lot more swimming pools in Tetley than you think.
Don't touch it.
Highgrove, like Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace, is a chopper pad, a way station for a prince and princess pursuing a role. 8 Bedford Row, London WC2 doesn't have a royal ring about it, but it's the base for what the prince calls his fighting arm, the financially separate but interlocking groups trying new ideas to help young people. The wide range of interests meant the council room was packed as the chairman took them through the agenda.
Industry and Commerce Liaison Committee. Any points about the Industry and Commerce Liaison Committee before we move on to another point arising from the minutes, which was the sale of Buckingham Street and the development of Jockey's Field. Is it really called that? Is that the bit out there?
One council member, Limbert Spencer, sat, rather squashed, waiting to report to the council on the projects for homeless and unemployed young people in London.
Which I think Limbert Spencer and Llewellyn Davis can say something about.
Thank you, Mr. Royal Highness. I don't think I need to stand, do I?
Are you kneeling at the minute?
I'm sitting down. I have long legs and a short body. Maybe we should get together. Well, where was I?
One project run by the Prince's Trust is based at holiday camps. This one's in Great Yarmouth. Everything from scuba diving to computers is there to help to motivate unemployed young people in a hard world. They get the chance to do things that normally they wouldn't have the confidence or the opportunity to tackle. This is vital to him. It's central to his role. He's delighted to be with them. But in the camp's drama school, something that wasn't in the Prince's briefing sheet, a song of political protest about the frustration of the young unemployed.
We don't need no jobs creation. We don't want a fascist nation.
Where a politician might have decided this was an appropriate moment to move on, the Prince chose to stay and talk to them.
Well, we're trying very hard to do something about it. It is a big problem, isn't it? So we're doing it.
He fervently believes one way of making or saving jobs is for big companies to buy British goods instead of things they now import.
But it takes a long time for these people to realise
time and money into it.
it's easier to get it from abroad, they think.
A lot of the top British technicians tend to go abroad at some stage, they don't they? Rather than, I mean, the money advantages seem to be higher.
At the moment. But it needn't be like that. The trouble is, I think, is that you have to invest a certain amount at some stage in order to get something back later.
Now time to go. His program was behind schedule. In the northeast of England, there's another scheme close to the Prince's heart. Sunderland has high unemployment and high youth unemployment. He chose it for an experiment giving young people a chance to work in the community. These Prince of Wales community venturers are working in a home for spastics. They're just back from adventure training in Wales. 48 young people have been on the first year of the course. Nearly half now have jobs. The Prince has gone there every 6 months and sent handwritten notes of encouragement. Having worked with the handicapped, some of the venturers are thinking of a career doing just that. And if the young people, like Gary and Susan, have doubts or problems, and they do, reporting direct to the boss on your time in the spastics home does help morale.
And did you get the instruction on what to do, or did you just get straight in? And you hadn't tried anything like this before?
No.
Thanks. Have you enjoyed it?
Been great.
Challenge, on the whole. And then had you also been out of work for a long time?
4 years.
4 years?
The Prince has put part of the blame for the plight of the young unemployed on a lack of business enterprise in the north of England since the decline of the big industries like shipbuilding. His practical help and his personal gestures are a small start. But his eyes are also on the places where there are lessons of enterprise and initiative to be learned. And he's made no secret that he thinks one place is America. So these photographs were off to Texas. The photos were gifts for the businessmen and officials of the Lone Star State, each personally signed. The Prince insists on that. Officially, he was there to celebrate an anniversary, but he believes in selling, in pushing British trade with America. So Lord Jellicoe, president of the British Overseas Trade Board, went along to make sure the Prince was well briefed on the opportunities for British exporters to America.
1,000 new jobs. And I think it's a failure of perception above all, that sitting way back in the Midlands or wherever, one tends to regard the United States as one single market rather than enormously diverse, as well as a very resilient economy.
So how do you encourage a different attitude of it?
Well, I think your visit will help there.
The first speech was ready in longhand and on a floppy disk in the travelling office. The Prince's staff provide background notes and ideas, but the final words are always the Prince's own. The various themes knit together into a philosophy of individual enterprise, plus a concern for others. It's influenced by the writings of Kurt Hahn, Lawrence van der Post, and Jung. Fine-tuning it for Texas meant lots of meetings.
Another one, George, getting sticky.
There had been briefing books and discussions beforehand, and now a chance for the British Consul General in Texas to contribute.
Well, what are you going to tell us that we don't already know?
Well, sir, that's one of the difficulties, no doubt, of this sort of briefing, but perhaps we could just very quickly run over the whole scenario, sir.
There's an art, a royal art, in being a good listener, listening to briefings, to talks on British exports of fibre optic communications, and to Texans who've been buying up British companies.
Are you buying any more? Are you selling? It's going to be selling.
In Texas, if you weren't going to meet the Prince of Wales in person, then the next best thing was to get a photograph of his hors d'oeuvre. The idea caught on and worried the security men, who never dreamed that royal groupies would storm a mere place setting. And there were the increasing demands of charity. A reception where some of the top families of Texas queued up to an hour to press the royal flesh. One or two, unaware of royal protocol, were a little over-friendly, but got away with it. And some just wouldn't let go. In Japan, etiquette was clearly spelt out before the receptions.
この続いてお集まりいただいた中を、両殿下が右と左に分かれまして。
In the Akasaka Palace in Tokyo, the local press gathered for the media reception that's held on every big tour.
Could I also take the opportunity to remind you that this occasion is an informal one and that all conversation is off the record and not for use in the media.
Please feel free to address them. Don't wait for them to start the conversation. If there's a lull, you simply address them as Your Royal Highness, ma'am, or sir. Feel free to be comfortable and relaxed. And there's no need to curtsy if you don't wish to, or bow if you don't wish to.
Press coverage isn't the be-all and end-all of a trip, but there's a knack in preparing a program that will interest the Prince and Princess, please their hosts, and be seen to be doing that.
Mr. Prime Minister, ladies and gentlemen, konnichiwa. I cannot help feeling that we do not know the Japanese as well as you know us. We should perhaps try harder to study the Japanese language, history, culture, civilization, and customs. We need to exchange more of our cultures, and by doing so, enrich our creativity. That is the way that reconciles and enriches hearts and minds, and leads to greater understanding and better communications.
The visit to the sumo wrestling provided greater understanding of how 10,000 Japanese, with cameras, like to spend Sunday. But the rules didn't need much explanation. A good big un will always beat a little un. 37 stone and every ounce a winner. With a champion's charm, the great man met the princess. He told reporters she could try eating a bit more. The princess can recite the curious times and places she gets to eat, like sitting for dinner on tatami matting of a kind you won't find in Buckingham Palace. She showed she was an old hand with chopsticks. But that was before she caught sight of the next course. The prince seemed to be missing his knife and fork.
I can just remember a little bit what I did before.
And at the end, someone had clearly been counting. There was serious talking, too, of widening trade gaps. The 2000 group, which tries to bring Britain and Japan closer together, told him of Japan's successes and some of the problems of success.
I didn't think Japanese education needed any reform anyway.
And any sort of cooperation, or there's a much greater move, isn't there, towards cooperative venture?
Yes, yes, sir.
Is that something that's being talked about?
Oh, yes, very much so. Last year, for instance, at TSLOP, when we met in England, we allocated almost one-day discussion on the possibility of industrial cooperation between Japanese and British industries.
And did that produce any...
Not right away, sir, but eventually, hopefully.
Japanese strike very hard drivers.
The Prince and Princess went along with the Japanese wish that they should stand up and wave in a motorcade through the center of Tokyo. It was a security risk, but a calculated one. It delighted 100,000 people. They felt the strain towards the end of a long tour. A few hours' peace and quiet was a godsend. The private gardens of the Omiyo Sento Palace in Kyoto are one of the most beautiful in Japan. For a moment, he wasn't an official visitor. He was again the gardener prince and the painter prince. Quite at home with his own company, he strolled alone. Taking some of the prince's other hobbies on the road needs a bit more organization than packing a sketch pad. He says his idea of relaxation is to exhaust himself. And polo is rather good for that. Whenever he's on tour, he tries to fit in a chukka or two on some foreign field.
Is he going to bring some more?
Yes, he would. More.
Yeah. Well, let me just see what that one's like, and then try something else.
While in Australia, the best polo ponies in the state of Victoria were brought together by the Prince's polo manager, Major Ronald Ferguson. He drew up a short list from which the Prince would choose the ones he'd ride in a match. Two days before the game in Melbourne, the royal choice. Practicing is called stick and balling. During a tour, it's the only way to work out, or guess, which ponies will do well when it matters. He was looking for one that would be a stable platform. It helps being able to play without worrying what the pony is going to do. And he finds it helps make him a better horseman to have to handle new and different ponies. All the time the Prince practiced, the pony's owners wondered which one he'd choose. Major Ferguson had already spotted the clues.
But he's obviously happy on this horse. He wouldn't attempt to take these penalties if he wasn't. So I think I can safely say that's going on the list to play. What Prince Wales is trying to do now, obviously get the feel of the horse. He's also at the same time, don't forget, he hasn't played since August, so he's trying to get his own timing and trying to combine his own riding and timing with these new horses.
Very nice.
After all had shown their paces, time for some decisions.
That one second.
Grey? Quiver.
The Prince picked the ones the polo manager thought he would. After more than a decade, the Prince and the Major know what they like. The only problem is that sometimes the ponies turn out completely differently in the game. Melbourne was successful with a minimum of surprises from the ponies. It was the Prince's first match for 3 months. To keep in shape, he does exercises every day and tries not to eat too much. That way he feels he's fit enough to play polo, to windsurf, to climb, or to fish. But polo is his only team sport, and for the winning team, a prize. And for some, a little extra. The Princess goes to watch regularly. It's where many of her friends often turn up too. Her charities sponsor matches. The private life, the public life, go hand in hand. They can try to be private people. They have to be public people. They have to do what the public expects of them. But they can try to do more of what they want to do in the interests of duty. There are the old duties. The Prince's valet looks after more than 40 uniforms. The Prince is a naval commander, an RAF wing commander, an air commodore in New Zealand, the colonel-in-chief of 16 regiments. His timetable is, in part, preordained by attendance at state occasions, be it the Trooping the Colour or the Garter Service. There are the new duties, links with 576 organizations, charities and committees on everything from the arts and architecture to the environment and science. And there are the inhibitions, the no-go areas. For a man who cannot talk about politics, the Prince can still get a message across. He can praise Lord Stockton's views on Britain's problems and make the time to unveil a painting of him. The Prince may leave little doubt in most minds of what his views are, but it needs a sure touch, and it can go wrong. So he can call for change to prevent Britain becoming a fourth-rate nation, but nothing that's directly critical of a government of the day. He sees state papers, meets world leaders, and is briefed on the issues. But he can't get into any controversy, such as the future of the Commonwealth he will one day be head of. After a high turnover in the senior staff, he and his private secretary, Sir John Riddle, are building a long-term team. But all the changes in office management must remain within the rules and traditions of Buckingham Palace. He has assets to help him through. He's learned how to get on with people. There's a firm handshake, a look straight in the eye. He's developed a memory for the names and faces of hundreds of people. They appreciate it. They like such gestures as the special telegram his office sent to an ex-serviceman from Lord Mountbatten's old ship, HMS Kelly.
Not at all. You got it. That's the great thing. Thank goodness the system works.
The Princess is, at 25, in her own words, getting her act together. It means hours going through letters, documents, and briefing papers. And with less time to see friends, she's quite a letter writer. She's also an enthusiastic photographer. Her sitting room is full of her own photographs of her family. She defines her role as a wife and mother first, then the patron or president of her 30 organizations. Sometimes that family background and her own experience working in a kindergarten can help on public engagements, such as a visit to a project for handicapped children in North London.
I don't mind that. You gave me my lovely flowers, didn't you? Oh, yeah.
She's very much at home here, but at some other engagements, the Princess can still get nervous behind the scenes.
We're sitting down.
She can seem shy and confident at the same time. Half of her engagements in Britain last year were on her own. And the more she does, like presenting the prizes at this piano competition in Wales, the more self-assured she becomes. And when she speaks in public, she's better since she slowed down her delivery.
Ladies and gentlemen, so much has been done by Help the Aged over the past 25 years. But, of course, there is still a lot more to be done, and Help the Aged needs everyone's help.
but her expression afterwards shows the relief that it's all over. Sometimes, as in Northern Ireland, she shows no outward concern at what could be a dangerous trip.
Warm welcome to Northern Ireland. I'm Senior Royal Air Force Officer of Northern Ireland with Captain Henry Hall. I introduce you to the General Officer Commanding, Lord Albert Costa, and the Chief Constable, Sir John Kent.
The heads of the security forces organised thorough protection on the ground and while she travelled from place to place around Belfast. There were obvious dangers in a walkabout, but the Princess wouldn't change her way of doing things. When the Prince and Princess worked together, they share the duties. In the train to Heathrow's new terminal, he checked his speech, while his wife did the driving. So they're a team, and now it's very much a four-person team. It helps that a husband and wife agree on mundane but important things in married life, the kind of food, the emphasis on health and fitness, the same dislike of smoking, the same enjoyment of watching films on the video.
You'll see in a minute.
After 5 years of marriage, the Prince and Princess have worked out their way of combining family life with their public duties. 5 years from now, they may have developed their role, their jobs, even more to their liking. They will always protect the amount of time they have to themselves. They'll spend it in the way they want, valuing simple moments, like looking after the rabbit in a pen at the bottom of the garden. Looking after pets was part of the Princess's childhood. Now Prince William is learning to help.
No, I'll pick it up then if you don't want to. You want to pick it up?
Alright.
That's it. Just look like that, look.
Come here.
Ready? Ready? There he goes. There.
The Prince and Princess don't pretend that their lives are without stresses and strains, disappointments and discoveries. But they believe they've moved the role along from planting trees and laying foundation stones. It's the royalty of charity and enterprise and egging on. Their hopes are in that. And in the boys, as their mother calls them. Who are the future.
Bunny! 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 I just did that. Can I hold him? Can I hold him? Can I hold him? Can I? Can I hold him? No. Can I hold him?
Other way. Other way.